Good day, everybody. Welcome back to our Working Together series live with Rabbi Karmi Ingber, who is in Israel at the moment, live from the Netiv Zoom room out of Houston, Texas. And let's just bop right in. We're waiting on the rabbi to show. So in the meantime, let's just. And Rod, how's everything going down in Texas with Netiv? I heard you saying the weather's beautiful down there.
Weather's beautiful. Things are going well. The Netiv community is doing well. I'm just so happy to see these regular occurring classes. Rabbi Ingber always does a great job. We started in the book of Ezra,
book of Ezra, yeah.
You realize there's not a lot of rabbis that do extensive teaching on the prophets. And so I'm really excited about turning the page on this new.
Yeah, and he just got into a couple of verses last week, and you can find that in last week's message a week ago Sunday, and I'm sure it's going to be exciting today for sure.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Well, God willing, he won't have any problems connecting or getting a hold of us anytime soon. But also just want to remind people there are other platforms in which you can watch this. Obviously, you can join us on Zoom, which would be netivzoom.com, netivzoom.com. And get right into the class, or you can join it by, Dan, why don't you share all the other platforms you can watch it on?
Well, yeah, we're broadcasting live on the Noahide World Center social media pages, Facebook and YouTube, and I'm also on the Noahide Society of Canada page. And, some days we get some great number of views, and sometimes it's a little less, but my admin in my chat can't make it to this session, and I find the more chats going on in the chat room seems to attract more people. It seems to be one thing people look for when they click on to view. If they see a good chat feed, they like to jump in. If they don't see a good chat feed, sometimes they jump out. So
I'm wondering if you shouldn't just post the chat feed up to the Zoom chat so that people, if they want to get on it, to encourage others to join the chat, may not be a bad idea. Do you know where is that chat feature at on
well, the YouTube chat? Yeah, I would have to bust it into. I'd have to code it into my hardware, but I don't believe I can post that actual chat into your make it live in your Zoom.
I could post the YouTube page with that video up so that they can join the chat on that side too. So, well, look,
I
who
sent
just
you that
joined
link about an hour and 10 minutes ago, but I see Rabbi Ingber's with us now.
Excellent.
So shall we turn the class over to the rabbi?
Let's do it.
All right. Yeah. Rabbi Ingber, so good to be with you, sir.
Good to be with you. Can you all hear me? Can you? Hold on. Let's raise the mic.
Oh, that's beautiful. It sounds perfect right there. Let me see.
How's it now?
Yeah, as long as you stay close to it, it's perfect. Your audio last week was a bit sketchy because you were far enough away that the compression would shut off your sound at a certain level, but that sounds good.
Okay. Let me just get a full screen going on here. Don't know why it's like this. Hold on a second. Sorry, I'm just not getting my screen right here. See you all. One more second, everybody.
Wow, what's happening now to your video? Whew, okay.
All right, let me just figure this out. 1 second. Okay. All right. You hear me now, everybody?
Oh, yeah, loud and clear. Thank you so much, Rabbi.
Now it's good? All right, great. I could see everyone. We're in the book of Ezra. We're going to
recording in progress
and talk about a few ideas. And then we'll open some questions. All right, so we did the first two chapters of Ezra. Again, I want to go through the third chapter now, third and fourth, and talk about it and see how this all relates to modern day situations that are going on. All right, so in chapter 3, they have arrived in the people, again, just to get the backdrop here, the Jews are exiled to Babylon. Okay, Babylon, in a certain sense, is the place where the Jews started in terms of Abraham, was originally from that area. Abraham was told to go to the Holy Land. But the Jews were exiled to Babylon, which the sages say was a benefit for them because they were familiar with the language. There were various things that made it easy for them to settle in Babylon. As a matter of fact, there was, over time, Babylon really became a major center. Right now, after the 70 years of the Babylonian exile, the Jews returned to Israel, as we'll learn. But later on, the Jews sort of, when the exile in the second temple happens, the Jews end up also in Babylon. Babylon becomes a center area. Okay, so Babylon was a place that the Jews were sent to, and now they're there for this period of time. And now it's the beginning of the redemption. Redemption is in the air, and they have now, as I said last week, the kings of Persia. Persia takes over the kingdom from Babylon, and the Persian kings, the first two kings of Persia, Darius the Mede, Daryavesh, and his son-in-law Koresh, Cyrus, they are the first kings. They were alternating. The father-in-law was the king first, and he died after the first year. And then his son-in-law, Koresh, Cyrus, took over. Now, they knew from Daniel that they were going to become the kings. They already heard the prophecy from Daniel that they were going to overcome Babylon and take over the kingdom. And they knew the right thing they had to do was to send the Jews back. And that's what Koresh, Cyrus, did in the beginning of his reign. He sent the Jews to the land of Israel. And just to put some context, because I have a series on Daniel. If you guys would want, I'll make it public at some point. But when the Jews were taken to Babylon, so the famous story there of Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon, who has various dreams, and Daniel, in the story there, he says, he forgets his dream, and he says you got to interpret the dream, and not only you got to interpret the dream, but I don't know what the dream is. You got to tell me what my dream is, and if you don't, I'm going to kill everybody, kill all the wise advisors. Man, that's a tough king, So what happened is that they were all getting freaked out. They didn't know what to do, and Daniel prayed to God, and God told him the dream, and He told him the interpretation too. And in the first dream that Nebuchadnezzar has, he sees a statue. The statue has a gold head. It has a silver arms and chest. It has its lower area. So the knees is made out of nechoshet, of copper bronze, and then the bottom is made out of iron, and the feet, the toes, are mixed between iron and clay. Okay, and Daniel interprets this, and what he tells him now is just very important because this is all playing out. The first kingdom of Babylon is called the Gold Kingdom. That, he said to Nebuchadnezzar, that's your kingdom. It has a certain greatness. The kingdom that will take over for you will not be as great, but it will have power. That is Persia, which is modern day Iran. Okay? Then the next part of the statue he saw was made out of copper or bronze, the choshet, and that was the Greeks. The Greeks are called brazen. A brazen face is a very strong. It's very strong metal, and the Greeks were very brazen because they were intelligent, they were philosophers, and they held themselves to be of the highest esteem. And they will take over the kingdom after, and then the fourth kingdom will be the kingdom that is iron, and that is the crushing kingdom of Rome. And now, then the feet, this is the expression you have in English, feet of clay, right? The feet were a combination of iron and cheres. Cheres is earthenware. Okay. Now, what was that? What were the feet? What was a combination of iron and earthenware? So this is the flow of the kingdoms that will reign before the Mashiach comes, before the kingdom returns to Israel. It will be Babylon, then Persia, then Greek, then Roman, and then the feet are a combination of the iron of Rome, because iron is the sword, and that's the power of the Roman machine to kill. And the feet, though, were clay, and that's a combination of the Roman, which is the Western world, and the Arab world, and that's going to be the power that that will be to the Arab people towards the end of history. As a matter of fact, it says it talks about how a certain period of time the Arabs will rule over the land of Israel, and that was the Crusaders were trying to fight that, trying to get it back for the Christians. But that all is discussed that the Arabs will also have a powerful situation. But the thing is that iron and clay do not mix together. And this is what we've talked about many times in the vision of Yechezkel. Yechezkel says that in the end of time, these two kingdoms will try to unite to fight against the Jewish people. And they will actually wage war against the land of Israel. God forbid, but this is the prophecy that could happen in a positive way. But the prophecies, they will try to wage war against the land of Israel. So you have an alignment now between Rome, which is the West, and you have the alignment between the Arabs. So somehow we don't know what the combination is going to be, because even though it says it in the verses in Yechezkel, but who exactly are those nations today? But there will be an alignment amongst some of the Western societies with some of the Arab nations to fight against the Jewish people. And what's going to happen is, it says in Yechezkel that they're going to come together, unite, fight against the Jews in the land of Israel, but they will fail. And what's going to happen is that just like iron and clay do not stick together, they don't stick together. So they kind of unified to go against the Jews in the land of Israel, but they turn around to each other and say, wait a minute, you're more of an infidel than they are. And their alliance falls apart. But that is what's called the War of Gog and Magog. That is the precursor in the vision of Yechezkel. It comes 3 times. They try to do this where they try to fight against the Jewish people, and they are unsuccessful. But that is the wars that lead before the end of time, because in the vision of Nebuchadnezzar, in the dream he had, which Daniel interprets, a rock then breaks the feet of the statue, and the whole thing crumbles. And then the rock grows into a giant mountain. And that is the idea that he says that the Mashiach, the Messiah from the house of David, will then come, and the former kingships will crumble, and then will be returning the situation as it was in this, Jerusalem as being the center of the world, and Torah coming out from Jerusalem. I just wanted to give you a little bit of a backdrop of that story, because for a few reasons. I wanted to know where we are. We are in this story now. We just transitioned from the Babylonian kingdom to the Persian kingdom. And this is very fascinating, because the Persian kingdom seems to be good to the Jews, because they're the ones who in the beginning will see allow the Jews to return to the land of Israel and rebuild the temple. And in the end, they're going to be the ones that are going to give the Jews the ability and the permission to go and to return to Israel and to build a temple. So this is very strange that because the Talmud says, who are the ones who are going to fight these wars at the end of time? Who are the ones who are really going to be the antagonists at the end of time? And the Talmud talks about first it being Rome. And the Talmud then concludes it's really going to be the ones you got to watch out the most for is going to be Persia. Even though because Persia are the ones who helped build the temple, they're the ones who are going to be the biggest problems at the end. The Talmud says, yeah. Who's Persia? Iran. So, ladies and gentlemen, if you think that this story of what Iran is going on, if you think it's just, well, whatever, it's not. This is a very, very serious story. And I want to tell you something very amazing here. So I told you that there's a combination of the Western powers that align with the Arabs to fight against the Jews in the end of time. The great Maharal explains that the combination of the West and the Arabs is embodied by Persia, by Iran. Why is that? Because Iran have taken the religion of the Arab nations, and they themselves are Aryans. They're really Westerners. They do not consider themselves to be Eastern people. So they themselves are that combination. So this is what's going on. This is very, very powerful stuff. And it's important to understand it because we're in this process. So now we're in the story of Persia coming back. But in the end, as we've seen, Greece became a tremendous power. Rome became a tremendous power. Now, I want you to say Rome. Rome is not just Rome. Is America Rome? I would say yes. Later on in the story of Daniel, there are 10 horns that are the great leadership, the countries that are the extension of the Western rule of Rome. And that is, those things are in the end of days. Well, I'm not doing Daniel right now, but those are the societies that have the power of Rome towards the end. And again, that's why, it's very, very important for all of you here to really make sure. I think I must have told you the story, but I'll tell you again. But at one time I was I'm sure I told you, but I'll say it again. So entertain me. So one time I was invited to a lunch that they were having. This is back when President Obama was the president, and there was a lot of things happening with Israel at the time, and I was invited to a lunch that was being given with a member of Congress in Georgia. And so they invited me, and there were a bunch of guys there that invited him for lunch. They said, let's invite the rabbi too. So okay, so I come there, and at a certain point, they asked me to say something. I said something, and I said to the rabbi, I said to the congressman, I said, I really hope America is going to, really stick with Israel and side with Israel here and what's going on. Yeah. I said, but let me explain to you why. I don't know if I'm clear why that is. It's not for Israel's sake. Israel's going to be fine. God's on our side. I'm not worried about that. I'm worried about America. You got to be on the right side of history. And when I said it, the whole place just went dead silent. Everyone got freaked out. Why do we bring this rabbi here? He's causing trouble. Oh my gosh. And it was dead silence in the place. It was like, oh no, everyone had their hands on their face. Oh, freaking Ingber here. And then the congressman shakes, he thinks about it, he goes, yeah, you know what? You're right. You're right. So that's what's happening here. That's why I always tell you, we have to understand, because how the nations are going to be involved in this process is playing out right now. It really is. It really is playing out dramatically now. And therefore, it's crucial for everyone to say, I want my country to be on the right side of history. Because in the end, what's going to happen is that those that are going to fight against Hashem and his Mashiach, as it says in Psalms, they're not going to make it. And those who say, no, we want to be part of this, they will be part of it. And that's the crucial understanding we need right now is what's going on. Okay, so now we're in Persia, and the Persian kingdom seems to be taking a positive attitude towards the Jews, and they send the Jews back to the land. They are now in the 7th month, and they've arrived from Persia. The leaders, not Ezra, as I said, Ezra's not there yet. He's still learning by his rabbi, who was the Baruch ben Neriah, the student of Jeremiah, and he has to get everything because he's going to be the leader. He has to make sure he has Torah is clear. The Jews, though, that go, they had some great leaders with them. Shua, the Ben Yehozadak, the Cohen. This is also fascinating, by the way. Ezra was a Cohen. So if Ezra would have gone to Israel, he probably would have been the high priest, the Kohen Gadol. But really, Yoshua ben Yotzadak was the high priest, son of the high priest. And so the law is you're supposed to give, if the son of the high priest, the Kohen Gadol, is worthy, he should become the Kohen Gadol, the high priest after him. So look at this. This is important to understand, just as a side of how the world works. Ezra didn't go for various reasons. The main reason we told you was that he had to stay in Babylon learning by his rabbi, who was an old man who couldn't come. But another reason is that it was really not, if he would have come, he would have been the high priest because he was the greatest of the sages there. But really, it would have been better to make the other person, Yoshua ben Yotzadak, as the high priest because he was the son of the high priest. So God orchestrated it in that way. And this is very important to understand in your life. Sometimes things happen. Well, why didn't I get the job? And why didn't I this and that? Things have a plan. And sometimes you are not supposed to encroach on someone else's space. Everything has its time and place. And when your time and place comes, it comes. So we have to make our effort. But there are grand reasons why certain things don't play out when they don't play out. Okay, so they get to the land of Israel, the leaders, Yeshua and Yotzak, and Zerubbabel. And in the beginning of verse 3, they build the altar. Now, they didn't build a temple yet, but the law is they were able to build an altar and make certain offerings. You can't make all the offerings because there was no temple, but there were certain ones that were allowed, and they built the altar then. Okay? Now, in verse 3, it says they prepared the altar on its place because they were afraid of the people of the land. Other people over there. What was that? Who are these people? As we said last week, so what happened is that the way it used to work in the ancient world, when you wanted to control a population, what you did was you exiled them and you brought other people into the land. So now what happened is there were other people. When the Jews were exiled in Babylon, they brought other people in. And that way there's you don't have a connection to your land. I mean, the truth is it's the most amazing thing. It's like, if you think about it, if you have someone who's Italian, who lives in America, for 3 generations, has he gone to Italy? Does he really relate as an Italian American? I mean, how many generations can a person be off their land and really still say this is their land? It doesn't work that way. People come from other places and they live. The Jewish people, were out of Israel for 2,000 years, and that every day, 3 times a day, was where they prayed and their focus. So it's a very fascinating, just as an aside. But now these other people were there, and they didn't want the Jews coming back because it was the Jewish land, and they were brought in there. So the Jews knew that if they start building the altar right away, first got there, there would be a problem because there weren't a lot of them. They had to all gather so they would be able to be together to protect themselves against the hostile people around them. And they also, another reason they wanted to build the altar right away was because they knew if they brought the offerings and they did the service properly, they would have God's protection, because that was part of the service. It's like prayer today is instead of the offerings were part of the service. So they wanted to get the altar set. They wanted to do it quickly when they were all united, so that the hostile neighbors would not come and stop them. And then they would have the merit of the altar was going, they'd be protected. Okay, so they build now the altar and they start bringing offerings. It leads into the holiday of Sukkot. And from then on, they are bringing certain offerings on a regular basis. Okay, now they start to get the money to build the temple. Okay, now in the second year, the second month of the year, the Jewish leaders now had already begun to build the foundation of the second. Okay. And they have the musicians. The musician thing is fascinating. I want you to understand this. In the service in the temple, there was always music being played. The Levites played the music. Music is a very central thing you have to understand. If you look in the story by Elisha, prophet, it says that he had this situation where he was upset about certain things. He said, bring the musician, because I need to have prophecy. You need to be in a happy state. And the music was able to transform and transcend the person. Music is an incredibly high wisdom. There are those that say that amongst the secular wisdom, music is the highest. So what happened was in the temple, I mean, I wish I knew what the music sounded like. I really wish I did, because it's the music of the temple was beyond this world. There's different kind of musics today, and people will refer to what they think is Jewish music today. That was not the temple music. So it's a very different thing. But the music they played was elevating and transforming. So they're building the foundation of the building, and the Levites are playing and they're singing and they're praising God. Okay. Now they finish building the foundation of the building, and now in the last verse in chapter 3, it says, or second last verse, it says that the elders who saw the first building started to cry. So there are people who were so happy, and there are people who were crying. And they were blowing the shofar, they were blowing the trumpets, thank God. But there's a split happening in the nation. Those who were younger, who never saw the first temple, they had this was the greatest thing in the world. We're rebuilding the temple. The older people who had seen it, the first temple, they cried because they realized the grandeur of the second temple was not the same as the first in any way, shape, or form. They realized from the foundation, from the stones they laid, and just understand the first temple had certain miracles that happened all the time, which was not in the second temple. The ark itself, like we said, was hidden in the second temple. There were numerous things that were hidden in the second temple. The second temple, although it had certain greatness, that it was the house of Hashem, but those who discerned, who'd seen the first temple, were old people and saw the first temple, they realized that the second temple was not on the same level as the first, not in its grandeur, and not in its level of holiness. Now, why was that? Well, there's a few reasons. One reason is that the fact that they went back by the permission of the king of Persia. How do you process that? Is that a good thing or a bad thing? The good thing and bad thing that they went back through the permission of the Persian king. Well, you could on one hand say, well, it's good for Cyrus that he was able, at least in the beginning, to be the conduit to allow it. But it's actually a very bad thing. It means that we're living in a world where the truth is not so clear, because by the fact that God himself did not say, okay, you're going without their permission, that itself takes away from the grandeur of the building, right? How do we get there? Oh, because this king let us go. What do you mean the king let you go? Who's the king? God's the king. What do you mean this guy let you go? So that whole concept is already a problem in the structure of the second temple, which is one of the reasons it will not be on the same level as the first one, because the first one was that Hashem brought the Jews into the land of Israel and had them build the temple. Shlomo built the temple. Here, by coming through the permission of the Persian king, it actually is a concealment. God, you know that he himself, it says Koresh, he wanted to make sure it was built with wood and certain other things. You know why? He put certain things of wood inside the temple. And the Talmud says, because he said, if the Jews ever rebel, I'll burn it. So this is like a power play, kind of like what you had, like in the whole story we had of Pharaoh. It's the illusion of Pharaoh thinks he's in control. So another reason that some people cried was because they realized that if this is happening through the hands of this foreign king, even if he is good and benevolent, it lacks the real understanding that the temple has to provide. The temple has to provide the understanding that there's one power in the world. That's what it is. Okay, good. Questions on what we said so far in chapter 3? Questions, ideas, comments? You could comment on anything you want about this, and we'll try to.
Rabbi, I got a couple comments from my friend.
Let's go on chapter. Yeah, please.
Who did you say was Ezra's teacher? What was his name?
Baruch ben Neriah. Baruch, the son of Neriah. And he was the student of Jeremiah, Yirmi. Okay, so he was a student, and he was an old man. He couldn't come, and and this really plays into a real discussion about and it plays into a discussion in life that you got to do what's right. You can't always control every circumstance. You have to figure out what are you supposed to do right now. And that's an incredible thing that the person who is Ezra is going to be the force. Ezra was so great. He's compared to Moshe in many ways. And it says that Ezra's merit, they could have had the miracles they had in the first temple and coming into the land of Israel with Moshe before the first temple. They first came with Moshe. They could have had those miracles with Ezra because he was so great. The people weren't on the same level as they were before, but Ezra was that great. He's going to be the person, and he understands that's not his role yet. It hasn't come up. I got a different thing I got to do, and I have to do it. And this is a very important principle because you have to a person could get really nervous. I got this, I got to do that. Person has to ask themselves, what am I supposed to do right now? What does God want from me right now? Right? When you start to chase after ideas of looks better, you get lost. So Ezra saw in terms of the dynamic of the world that he was not supposed to go yet. And therefore he ended up doing the right thing in the right time. Went in the right place. All right? Good. All right, chapter 4. Now starts the trouble. So the people, there were the neighbors that were there, that were brought there in the times of the Assyrian. What happened was they had brought, when they exiled the Jews, they had brought other people into the land. And those we'll call them the Samaritans largely. And so there were people who were in the land now who had been brought there. And they, in chapter 4, they go over to the leaders of the Jewish people and they say, let's build with you. We'll build with you. Verse 2 in chapter 4. Because we also serve God. And to him, we bring offerings. The time of Asar Chadon, the king of Assyria, who brought us here. In verse 4, they say to them, no, it's not for you and us to build. Because we're going to build for Hashem. Hashem commanded us through the king code. Now, this is a problem, ladies and gentlemen. We want to bring everybody in to do what they got to do. So why did they say no? Right? Why didn't they say, yeah, come on down? Like why did they say no to them? What was the reason? Who are these people and why did they say no? Let's try to understand. So these people, what we call the Samaritans or Kutim, and what happened was, I think I mentioned it last week, but what happened was they were brought to the land of Israel. When they were brought to the land of Israel, they had a tax of lions. There were lions in Israel at the time. They were wild animals, and they started getting killed by the lion. So they send a message back to Syria. Said, "Listen, I'm getting killed here. You sent us here, and and apparently the God of this land doesn't like what we're doing." So they were sent people to teach them, and they said, "Let us find the ways that the God of this land wants to be worshipped." All right, well, kind of sounds, yes, okay, but it wasn't. Why wasn't it okay? Because what they did was they just piled another service on top of what they kept doing. So they had all of their idols, and that was one of the reasons when the rabbis really eventually looked into them. They also said they went to their temple and they saw they had a statue of a bird, which was part of their idol worship. They kept it. So what they do, they took Jewish customs and Jewish laws and they put them on top of what they were doing previously. So they didn't exchange it. And this is the mindset of the ancient idolaters. I want to try to explain this because this is very relevant in terms of a lot of issues in Noahide law and in general. So what happens is that they worship God in a certain way. They did a lot of the commandments. In the Talmud, it says that the commandments they did, they were very exacting. Their matzah was great. They did various things. They were very, very exacting. But they kept their old stuff. That's why the Jewish people didn't want to take them. I want to explain this a little bit. Because some people discuss this idea, like you see the same thing in the book of Daniel with Nebuchadnezzar. Nebuchadnezzar says to Daniel, "Oh, your God is the God of gods." So what does that mean? Is that idolatrous or not idolatrous? God, what do you say?
That sounds idolatrous out the wazoo. Why? Because he's saying your God is higher than our gods, but there are many gods.
Okay, all right. Let me try to sweeten the pot a little bit here. What about the guy who says, "Well, your God is the ultimate power, but there are other powers in the world that God created, and we have that intermediary. We pray to the intermediary, but we understand that God is the God that is the ultimate God." What do you think?
To me, it's the same thing.
It's the same because you're a smart guy. So what happens is that's what's called shituf.
Shituf, exactly.
That's called shituf. The question is, there's a lot of discussion in Jewish law. For a Jew, that's certainly forbidden. And there's a discussion about if a non-Jew says that I agree God is the ultimate power, but he put this force in the world and I'm relating to both, that's called shita. It is certainly not a good thing to do. Most authorities really hold that that's idolatry for a Noahide also. There are some opinions that seem to say give it not a status of idolatry fully to a Noahide. If the person says that there is one God, the source, and he has a power source, and I relate to that also. There are some opinions that would say that that may not be called idolatry. It's certainly, the wrong thing to do. The question is, would a person who's not Jewish, be transgressing the 7 Noahide laws? Let's say, yeah, there are religions like that. I mean, without naming names, that there are many religions and biggest religions in the Western world kind of have ideas of like, well, there is a God, and then there's a. So it does seem when you go through the topic that it's really idolatrous. It does seem like that. There is a discussion about maybe they make a vow and they just mention a name of a saint, and but it seems that would be considered to be idolatry for everyone. There is an opinion that maybe if there's an understanding of that this is the God and then this is a force, maybe it wouldn't. Anyway, it's obviously something that is really problematic. Let's go through the concept here. The concept is that, and this is the Shema. Say the Shema. There is one source of everything. And the Shema Yisrael, Hear Israel, the Lord our God, Lord is one. Shema Yisrael Shem Keshem Echad does not mean one and not two. That's of course. It means that there is one power, and that's it. One source of everything. It means that deeper mystical reasons, or even deeper what it means. One, and God is one in every way. But to give anything else power is it means that really dead and bad way to go, because it's to lie, and that's what idolatry was. Idolatry, and I've explained to you before, but I want you to understand a little better. Idolatry, what happened was these people were not idiots. What they were doing was they saw there were forces in the world that God created, and they thought, and correctly so sometimes, that if they knew how to manipulate those forces, maybe certain things could happen. There are those that did it on the side of what's called black magic. Let me explain how that works. Because there's a system of holiness God created, spiritual forces that bring certain things in the world. And there is a parallel system of impurity. And the people who do this weird stuff, this weird black magic, you may have heard about things and crazy stories. What they're doing is they're coming into a line of impurity that parallels the line of purity. Now, why is that? The reason why there is something impure that parallels the pure is for a very important reason. The reason is the world needs to be in a balance so you could choose good, right? If everybody who did good things was healthy, wealthy, and wise, and every time a person did something wrong, a lightning bolt came down and struck them and they died on the spot, you'd have a lot of good people, but they'd be doing it for maybe the wrong reasons. They'd be doing it because, it's like, yeah. So what happens is the way the world works is that you have to have this balance where one side could pull you and another side, and you could choose. So just like there is a power to connect to God through the spiritual forces in the world, the positive, there is a system of the negative. So people who do see the idea of black magic and all these type of things, what they do is they actually hook into the opposite spiritual negative forces that are in the world, and they know how to actually summons those things. That's why they sleep in graveyards. They do all these weird things to bring impurity upon them, and then they manipulate spiritual forces to create things. Now, of course, obviously, if God doesn't want work, it won't work. There are even an ability that righteous people have to say names of certain spiritual forces in the positive and make certain things happen in the world. And the law is that a righteous person should not do it because, why are you using the king's scepter, so to speak, right? In other words, there is the idea that God created forces and powers in the world that he creates and that God controls and runs. But theoretically, the idea of idolaters was to go to the point and short circuit the system. That was their idea. So what happened was here that these Samaritans came along and said, yeah, we believe in God. We serve God. We have other forces that we do our thing with. And that's why the rabbi said, no, once you bring that contamination into the system, we all have a problem. You can't do that. And so, however we come out for, sort of straight idolatry, not straight idolatry, the idea of blending in any other power in your life is a problem. It's an emotional problem. It's like, if you think about it, it's one of the deepest things that the commentators explain in the end of history, what you're going to see. In the end of history, you're going to see that God ran the whole show exactly how he wanted. And what's going to happen is you're going to flip out. Because you're going to say, wait a minute, I thought this person was in charge, and that person was in charge. And then and you're listening to the news, and I don't know what's going on. The news is so crazy, no, I don't want to get into too much politics, but you have this guy talking about the news, and he's asking some good questions. So we gotta get rid of him. Get him out of here. You're asking too many good questions. We don't want this. Get out of here. So we don't want you thinking. So these things that people start to believe is power, in the end, when they see that it's all been God moving it all along, that's the ultimate understanding of God's oneness and complete control. It's like, for example, if I have two people that are, let's say, fighting, and one's stronger than the other. So what do you say? You say, well, okay, this guy is strong, this guy's even stronger. Okay, so God overcame the whatever, So God, you say, so the foolish person says God is stronger than this other person. But the other person has his own power. That's wrong. If you're in a situation that you realize that, let's say, someone's battling somebody else in some way of some sort, war or just an interaction, and you realize there's like 25 moves back and forth, but you realize that the first person was all 24 moves the other guy did was all just bring him to exactly where he wanted, right? The chess master was just like moving you, and you think you're making the decision, but you're really not. You are, but then you realize the incredible oneness and there's one power of the world. And that's the idea of the Shema of understanding. There's one source. So when these guys came along, the rabbi said, you can't do that because we blend in your philosophies. We can't. And I think it's really important because we want to be able to help people that have a lot of people have some good ideas and some bad ideas. And you want to pull out the good and get rid of the bad. But there's certain times where you do it, like when you're building the temple, you're doing something central, but you can't mix in anything that's going to dilute and destroy. So they said no. So what did the people do? What the people did was they started to hire advocates and contractors and everything they could to go and to besmirch the Jewish people. And they wrote letters to the king, King Cyrus. And they wrote to him. The Malbim explains they wrote this in a way where, because in the old days, the way they used to write it was everyone wrote from their language, and then it would be translated. That's when translators. So that they did was they wrote it because what they claimed to Cyrus was not true. It was something that he should have been able to check out. They said they're building the wall around the city, they're fortifying the city, and they're rebelling against you. And go check it out. These guys are troublemakers. Now, it's a dangerous lie to go, even though, again, in politics, we see people lying straight out. They seem to have no really qualms if people are going to just catch them on the stuff they're saying. But these people seem to have no qualms about it. Yeah, they're building the wall. You couldn't go and see. So what they did was it said, they wrote it, they had it, it was a translation. That's the way they did it. And they wrote it in such a way that it had a double meaning that when it was translated, they were able to translate, no, they're building the wall and they're rebelling against it. The way it was written was that the way it was written originally in the other language, it had a double meaning. It could be the people are in the city, and they're rebellious people. Or it could be read, the people are building the city and they're rebelling against it. That's the way the Malbim says you could have written in such a way where the people are in the city, but these are bad people, they're rebellious people. Well, the people are in the city and they're building it to rebel against you. They're fortifying the city. So they sent this message to Koresh, and he bought into it. And he said, "Okay, I don't want this." He didn't look into the truth of the canard that they said that they were building the wall, because they weren't building the wall. That's gonna be later. But he did look into the Jewish people and the land of Israel. And this is interesting because Jewish people have been in exile for a long time. It's like when I was a kid, it was like, there's a certain famous Jewish comedian, like, Woody Allen, the famous Jewish comedian. Woody Allen was like always kind of goofy, and this and that. Then, like they had the person playing Wonder Woman was an Israeli soldier. And I know she's somewhat religious. I know she likes Shabbos candles. So she was, but that became like sort of a sort of vision or an explanation or a prototype of the Jewish people. Now they have these warriors. Years ago, Israel just had its 75th anniversary, and so they've come back to the land, and people have, the land of Israel. People are standing up for what they are. But for 2,000 years, the Jews were in exile, and so they didn't have the picture in the mind of what the Jews were. But the Jews were always very strong-willed, and they protected their land, they guarded their land, and they were very, very, very fierce in that way. So Cyrus looks into the fact and says, yeah, this was the place that that was the hardest to conquer. This was the place that, the ancient kings kept talking about, like, can they conquer Jerusalem? They knew that when Solomon built Israel, it was the major power. And it's funny because I know for you guys, for me, it's hard to picture, and for Jews, it's hard to picture because so many years of exile, you don't realize that they were the center of civilization and that power. So he looked at it and he said, I don't want to mess with these people. And he halts the building of the temple. And it stops. And it sits like that. It sits like that for years. Okay, from the time of Cyrus, you see, is going to be another quite a few years. We'll see exactly how many until the Jews start building. It's the rest of Cyrus's term. It's King Achashverosh, another 14 years. And then it's 2 more years into the next king until the temple gets rebuilt. And that's what we're going to see next week in the beginning of the next chapter. The beginning of the next chapter is fascinating. It says in the beginning of chapter 5, it says that the building again in chapter 4 was halted from being built. In chapter 5, it says this Nabi Chagai, the prophet Chagai started prophesying, and Zechariah. And they prophesied to go and to build the temple. And this was amazing because what happened was the people got into a mindset that was, okay, the temple has been halted. Achashverosh, the next king after Cyrus, is the bad guy. And he actually writes what's called a sitna. He writes a decree. This temple cannot be built. And he is the king in the story of Esther. And he says to Esther, don't ever ask me. Don't ask me to build a temple. That's something I'm never going to do, because he understood that was his battle. He wanted to be the king of the world, and this was the other side. But the next king after Achashverosh is Darius the Persian. Not the first one, but Darius the second, who's the Persian. Many people say he is the son of Esther, which is now really bizarre. That means he's Jewish. But he is the king of Persia. So now, in the beginning, though, he didn't get the Jews. The Jews didn't start building the temple, even though maybe they could have, because now things had eased up. The decree of Achashverosh and had changed, because now they had a king that was, we're going to see afterwards next week, was much more positive towards the Jew. He was theoretically maybe a Jew himself. He was certainly, Achashverosh's son. He was very positive to Jewish people. But they didn't go and build a temple. Why not? Why not? I want to tell you an amazing thing here. So the prophet Chagai started prophesying, go build a temple without permission. And that's how it starts. We'll see next week when they started building, they didn't have permission from Darius II yet. They didn't have his permission. They started doing it. And then eventually we're going to see how it happens that he approves of it. But they waited for the prophet to come and say, get up and do it. And one of the explanations is the prophets, people didn't do it because they said, wait a minute, we know there's going to be a war. The war of Gog and Magog before the Mashiach comes, before the temple, the final temple. So they were calculating it's not the time yet, which was not the calculation, because the second temple was going to be destroyed. It's the third temple that's going to be the one that's going to be preceded by the war of Gog and Magog. The war is the final days. Hopefully they'll be in a peaceful way, but that is the prophecy we talk about. And so they held off because they thought the time wasn't right. I got to tell you this because it really is relevant to today. I mean, it's bizarre. It's bizarre what happened here. The Temple Mount is right here. We're not far. I'm not far from it right now. Now, there are places that we can't go because we don't have a certain level of purity. The red heifer don't have. But there are places most people say, most rabbis say that we do know some of the Jews can go to certain places on the Temple Mount. But again, I'm not saying a person should or shouldn't, because there are amongst the Jewish sages. Like, I've never gone up there myself because I'm afraid I don't want to step in the wrong place. And I haven't gone through it in great detail, but some rabbis say that they do know where to go, and many sources say they do. They just don't want to have it be opened up, because then we're going to have problems. But the point is that on one hand, we wait for, like, the prophet Haggai to say, go and do it. We wait for the sign. And then the question is, when does a person have to take the initiative to start to push this movement? it really is changing. I mean, my son, actually, one of my sons does go up there, and he does tours on the temple. He knows where to go. He does tours on the Temple Mount, and he told me that years ago, very few Jews. He actually got arrested once for moving his lips on the Temple Mount. A Jew is not allowed to move his lips on the Temple Mount. Believe that? He got arrested once for doing it. So now it's been easing up a little bit, but you have to understand, that is the point where the heavens kiss the earth. That's the meeting place, and when the third temple is built, this is going to be the greatest thing for the entire world. And so we're going to see here in next week's class that there was a calculation they were making. Not ready. We can't. We shouldn't. We don't have a prophet today, and we don't know when and where. But the time, has to come soon. It will come soon. What should people do? How do they decide and where they go? That's a complicated discussion. But it was amazing that the Jews, they were stopped, and then there was a moment where maybe they could have pushed it, but they thought, well, it's not the time right. And we're going to see next week that Haggai the prophet, Zechariah the prophet say, no, you got a message from God, just go and do it. So hopefully we're going to get that message soon, and we'll be able to continue to build third. Okay, that's my thoughts for today. Questions, ideas, comments?
Great
Shalom,
class.
Rabbi. Yeah, that was beautiful. The world is waiting with bated breath to see everything unfold the way you're laying it out. And I got a few comments that some people were, when you were talking about the building of the second temple, some people were saying they didn't have the ark or proper anointing oil and things of that nature.
Right. Correct. There were things that were hidden, and you have to understand that it's a very amazing thing. There were things that were hidden. Yoshiao, the king, hid various things. He hid the oils. They hid the ark. They hid various things. They knew that the reality of the world was changing, and it really did. You have to understand that the first temple time, things were happening still in very miraculous ways. The second temple leads into the modern era. Even the setting up of the Jewish idea of praying 3 times a day and all these things that were set up in the second temple because they knew it was going to be destroyed. It was going to be a long exile. So the second temple, was missing various things that were hidden. And as we said, that's why the people were crying, the elders, because they saw it wasn't going to be with the same grandeur as the first temple. But it served obviously a very central purpose, which I will maybe explain next week, because there's certain things that I'll give you a hint for right now. There's certain things in life that when you're given them as a gift, that's one level. When you work at them yourself, that's a different level. And that's why in the second temple period, in that period of time is when you see the flourishing of what's called the discussions of the oral Torah. That's where you see what happens is that the first temple period is really summarized by a prophetic experience. God is appearing to the prophets. The second temple, that's not any longer how it's moving. It's now moving from the people being able to take the prophecies, take the ideas of the Torah, and now to apply it with their wisdom, and that becomes the expansion and the discussions.
Wow, what a statement for sure. Yeah, that's definitely a change. So would you say that the challenges of Israel today, say, facing the building potential of the third temple, comparing to that which they faced in the building of that second temple, would you say they had a little more, I don't want to say hesitancy, but a little more maybe depth in the problem?
Well, the second temple, as you see, they had the advantage of having prophets, right? So the prophet Haggai comes and tells them what to do. So we had prophets. We don't have prophets today, which is which again, it's not an accident. That's why God set the world now that we're in a time of using our wisdom. But I think certain things are going to play out. It's unfortunate, but we weren't ready. But there was about 5 years ago, they thought they found the red heifer. There was a red heifer in America. And what is the red heifer? I mean, the red heifer is one of the strangest laws in the Torah. It's the law that King Solomon said he couldn't understand, but it's a law that there was people come in contact with the dead have what's called tumas meis, a certain level of impurity, and it's very hard to go and you can't remove it only with the special law that they create this special water that comes from the ashes of a red heifer, a cow that does not have 2 black hairs. That's very hard to find. There were 7 that were made throughout history. Moshe made the first. Ezra is going to make the second. There are 7 that were going to be made throughout history. We need the 8th, because once that happens, so then already everyone, people who be pure fully can go up to the temple. So, I think that's going to be, I don't know. I don't know how it's going to play out, but I think when we find that's going to be a major turning point, a major catalyst, because at that point, there's no excuse. You can go to the temple. It's under your control, really. And now that could be why, and I think I've mentioned this to you before. Those of you in Houston here know about Vendell Jones. Vendell Jones was the original Indiana Jones, and he was an archaeologist who found a lot of incredible things. Some of his kids, I think, they converted and live in Israel. And he used to go on digs. My brother went on a dig with him, and had some friends that went on digs with him, and he found some incredible stuff. And the story was that I had from a friend who went on a dig with him is that he found a copper plate in the real Indiana Jones movie, where it showed him where certain things were by the Dead Sea area. And they went by and they found certain things. One of the things they found were the spices from the incense offering, 11 spices. This I saw myself because I was teaching in the yeshiva at the time. A guy was a sound and light man working for me, came in with a bag of 2,000-year-old incense offering. I mean, like, imagine that. Walked in, got a bag of 2,000-year-old incense offering. And he told me that they had sent it to NASA, and they identified exactly the 11 things in these spices of the incense offering. So they found the real one. They found and in this map, apparently, he had a place where he said was the still ashes of the red heifer, because there were 7 that were made. There was still always some left. They always kept some. They always even added the ones from the previous one. So he said he knew where it was. And in the story I heard years ago is the Antiquities Society did not let him dig. Now, why didn't they let him dig there? There are ramifications. That's right. So the thing is that's why you have to get ready spiritually. You got to get ready emotionally. You got to do all the things you got to do. And when God is going to let us get it, I mean, once that floodgate opens, that's going to be a very, very powerful moment. So I think the red heifer issue is a big issue. Like I said, they had one. They found one in America, and it was a secret place where it was, and this and that. But then it developed a disqualification.
Wow, thank you for sharing that. I think that definitely is like the first domino in a row for sure.
Yeah.
Does anybody in the Netiv Zoom room have any questions for the rabbi before we wind her down?
I believe Cheyenne had a question.
Yes,
or
Cheyenne had a
something.
question.
Thank you, Rabbi. My question actually has to do with a little earlier when you were talking about kind of more on the Daniel process leading to Ezra, that you talked about the Mashiach and the rock that he would have, and he would crush, everything.
Right.
So at that point, since the Mashiach comes with normal means, he's completely human. Can you also view him then as you have the side of him that is the military leader aspect of him? Would it be at that point coming in a normal military way, or is that more of a spiritual way, or can it be interpreted as both or one or the other?
Okay, so it's a very good question, and you have to remember, Maimonides writes that you can't know when you're in the process. When you look back, you'll see how all the prophecies played out. When you're in the story, you can't fully know. And the reason for that is because we have free will and things could happen in various ways. The verse says in the prophets that it's called B'tach Ishena, that the Mashiach come faster if we merit it, and it comes slower at an appointed time. So our free will is still playing into it, which also means our free will plays into how it manifests. If it comes, there's two verses. One says it's like a poor person riding on a donkey, which means it's not in the supernatural way. And there's other places that talk about it, in a more spiritual, supernatural way. So it really depends how it plays out. It does seem though that that what's happening is that the coming to Israel seems to be the beginning of the process. And there are, great sages who discuss it in incredible detail. Sometimes I'll say another time, but it's very amazing stuff how they line it up. The Vilna Gaon wrote, and he calculated based on the creation of Adam and when he was created. He actually writes that in the year 1948, people would come back. He wrote in the early 1800s. So, and he sent his students to in the 1800s, sent his students to Israel because he knew the process was happening and people were coming. So, but it seems that he writes also that it's happening in a somewhat more natural, hidden process, was the way it seems to be happening. And the reason for that is, probably is that it takes a high spiritual level to happen the other way, and it may be happening in the more natural process right now. That's what seems to be unfolding. So yes, it says he will fight the wars, and he will, again, as you said, who is Mashiach? Mashiach is a great sage. Okay, he is not in the level of prophecy of Moshe. Okay, he's below Moshe in prophecy, because there cannot be a prophet as great as Moshe, because Torah was given through Moshe. Can't be anyone be greater prophet. That's what it says in the Torah. So the Mashiach will be a great sage who will be very wise, like Shlomo and David, but he'll be a step lower in Moshe prophecy, but very great human leader that will fight the wars and deal with the situation. That's the process as it's unfolding. Did I answer your question? All right. Very good, guys. All right.
David is up. David Donahue has a question.
David,
We'll let
please.
this be the last one.
Yeah.
Hi, Rabbi, real quick, just kind of going back to what you said, kind of about the beginning about the last kingdom that was made of iron and clay, being Rome and the Arab kind of confederacy, you might say. Kind of thinking through that, and if with the 10 horns, if our nation, Hash v'Shalom, potentially becomes an enemy to Israel, what does that mean for people like us who fear the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob and love Israel? And potentially at that point, if the gathering of the exiles has already happened and completed, do you see anything ever happening within the rabbinate or any of the the decision making people over in Israel that would make a place for Noahides if we didn't have a place here anymore?
Okay, so a few things. First of all, people will have a place in their land because in the end, everyone is going to see what happens. Torah comes out from Jerusalem and eventually the whole world is affected by it. So you don't have to worry. I mean, you want to be on the right side of history because you want the nation as a whole to be counted as that. But the individuals who are on the right side are on the right side. You know, God knows who's who and what's what. So a person is doing the right thing, and he's not. You know, he might not be able to save his entire nation, but he will certainly save himself and those who that subscribe to the correct views. So it's not going to be that in the end, oh, no one's going to live in these countries, those countries. In the end, everyone will say, oh, that was true, that was real. Everyone's going to see and understand this is the Mashiach, and everyone's going to realize. And the whole world, it says, the whole world will turn into a pure language, and everyone's going to serve God. So that is going to happen. That's going to be in every land. So there'll be but I just say in that process while it's happening. So we want to make sure that, like, you know, that the country as a whole is part of that. The individuals will be part of the process who choose the right thing. The countries that make mandates and laws that fight against this, so the country on the whole has a problem. Eventually, they will realize it, and those who were on the right side of history will remain on the right side of history. So there's no problem. There's going to be no place, you know, because in the end, every place is going to be, you know, an extension or coming out the Torah from Jerusalem to the entire world. Now, as far as being in Israel, so the law is, yes, the law is that what's called ger toshav, somebody who is a righteous Noahide, accepts the Noahide laws and keeps the Torah and the sovereignty of Israel, can live in the land of Israel. Man, that really is honestly the answer to the whole Arab-Israeli conflict, which nobody likes. But the issue is that well, what should there be eventually? Eventually, to be a place that, yeah, you know, subscribe to laws of morality, understand this is the land for the Jewish land, and there is room for, you know, for everyone who wants to be part of that. So both in Israel, in that sense, the ger toshav is not only lives in Israel, but the laws, you have to support him and help him. It's true for you know, everyone who understands what it is, wants to be part of it. And as far as your country goes, your country will also have a place. I just don't want, you know, like, you know, there's, you know, again, I mean, we have people from different countries here. So I mean, I was born in America, so I talk about America, you know, but America had and has a lot of great things, you know. Moshe Feinstein talked about America as, like, you know, his responses talked about the nation of kindness. There's a lot of positive things. And America had a lot of great ideals that, you know, it's scary now because they're losing contact with a lot of things that made the country great. Again, yeah, of course, no one was perfect, and then people made a lot of mistakes. I'm not saying not, but there was certain positive things that should remain, and so I'd like to see that, you know, America, you know, stays on the side of what's right. But, you know, it's always been a battle in the States also. I mean, there's a book my brother told me about. I didn't read it, but it was by David Friedman, who was the ambassador Israel under President Trump. And you know, he talked about dealing with the State Department. The State Department was very anti-Semitic and had a lot of, different agendas. So you don't even know the half the agendas sometimes. And you know, and I mean, and that's one of the things right now. And this is what's going on in politics, which is that, you know, there was like Lyndon Baines Johnson was like a gruff kind of guy. If they had, you know, every recording of what that guy was saying, I mean, the world couldn't function. You know, he would have been kicked out. Like, so today, everyone knows what's being said, and everyone's tracking. But what happens is that you're really kind of seeing emperors not wearing any clothing. It's fascinating what people start to. If you look, you say, wait a minute, no, what what kind of lies are being dished out? What really is going on here? So you start to wonder, the people have to say, okay, what is true and what's being done? And in a democratic country, it has the concept that if the majority of people really want to act in a proper way, and they have the to do that. So I think just there's the idea of the nation as a whole and America remaining and proving to be a positive force. And then there's individuals. Every individual who does the right thing is going to be fine. That's the bottom line. Hashem says it's a the Medrash in the Torah says that Hashem says, based on a verse, that every person, Jewish, not Jewish, male, female, every person, every kind of person in the world, it goes by how you act. You don't believe that, that, okay, so, you're in this place and all of a sudden you're going to get stuck with everyone else's bad activities. Person who acts properly, wherever he is, God relates to that person and sees how he's acting and he's judged accordingly. All right? Okay, stay strong, everyone. We will
Rabbi
see you.
did a great job. I just want to say to everybody before you go, Mary has surgery Wednesday, God willing. It'll be Wednesday. And please pray for her. Hashem is with her, guiding her, and that she would have a beautiful wisdom to share with others during this time. Most of all, Mary, may you have the greatest confidence and Hashem's loving kindness towards you during this time.
Mary, yeah, you should have a successful surgery and a complete healing. What's your mother's name?
Elizabeth.
Elizabeth. Mary Robbins. Mary Robbins.
Do you need her full name or just her first name?
No, it's fine.
Okay, Elizabeth.
Yeah, so we're going to be praying for you, Mary.
They'll have accommodations for me to go somewhere after the hospital releases me.
We should still be able to get a hold of you.
I can't come home.
We should still be able to get a hold of you with text
for
and stuff,
sure.
right?
Pardon?
We should be able to get a hold of you with text and things like that on your phone, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Once I'm alert enough.
Okay. Well, you're in our prayers, sis. And don't forget, tomorrow night, Rabbi Zvi Avner starts his first class since before Pesach. So, Rabbi, brilliant again.
Yes,
Be
awesome,
well, and
Rabbi
we'll see you
Karmi.
guys next week at the same time.
Next week, all the best. Man.
Shalom, shalom.
Recording.
Right on. So that's our working together class for today. Excellent session for sure. I think Rabbi Ingber covered plenty of things that plague a lot of people. I hear a lot of comments that, so many people are concerned about their involvement or the way the unfolding of Scripture affects them. And I think he really pulled it around in the end there, even though his microphone seemed to be fading. And still, excellent message, and hopefully you'll join us back next week. If you like the video, click that like button. Feel free to share it on social media. I know that there's a message in there that a lot of people could benefit from, answer a lot of questions, and hopefully we continue with more of that for next week. So till then, have a wonderful, wonderful week, everybody. Bye for now.